Hey guys, it's Kasera, and today I'm going to be determining which audiobook is better, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone or Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. For those of you who haven't been to my channel before, Harry Potter is one of my favorite series. I've recently been doing a reread of it. So the first book of the Harry Potter series is really fresh in my head. So I felt like this was a pretty good time to do a video like this. And for those of you who are watching from the future, this is also happening during the coronavirus pandemic. So during this time, Audible has created this website, stories.audible.com, that has many free audiobooks for children, including the UK version of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, narrated by Stephen Fry. Last year, I first got introduced to the Harry Potter audiobooks. Mind you, I have been introduced to the Harry Potter books when I was a child, so I've reread the Harry Potter books many times since I was a child, but last year was my first time listening to the audiobooks, and since I'm in the US, I listened to the Jim Dale version of the Harry Potter audiobooks, which is the US version, and I've been meaning to try the UK one. I really wanted to know which one I would like better, so I felt like this was the perfect time to do that. So for this video, I'm going to be listening to the audiobook for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, narrated by Stephen Fry, as well as Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, narrated by J.K. Rowling, and deciding which one I think is better and which one I recommend you guys should listen to. So I did this kind of vlog style, so I have a little vlog where I talked about every 3 or 4 chapters or so, which I will go into that, and then afterwards I'm gonna pull it all together in a summary. The vlog will have some spoilers in it for the first book in the Harry Potter series. It's not gonna be major spoilers, they're very minor spoilers, but I will have timestamps in the description in case you wanna skip the vlog. But first, we're gonna start with the vlog. So I just finished the first 3 chapters of the audiobook for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, so it's the Stephen Fry narrator, and I noticed there's a little bit of an echo on the audiobook. I thought maybe it was just the beginning, but it seems to go through the entire 3 chapters. I don't know if it's because I'm streaming it from that new Audible website or if it's actually like that. So I'm gonna try and not use that as part of the criteria and listen to it not taking that little echo into account. So far, I really like a few things about the Stephen Fry narration. First of all, his Dudley impersonations, especially when Dudley's upset, is fantastic. I really love that. And I think he does a really good job of Aunt Petunia's voice, which is very difficult for male narrators to do female voices sometimes. So I think that's really good so far. Okay, so I just finished the first 3 chapters of the Jim Dale narration for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I'm trying really hard not to be biased right now. But the first thing I noticed was the speed and the pacing. So Jim Dale is a little bit faster than Stephen Fry in the speed-wise, but his pacing changes. Stephen Fry keeps a pretty steady pace throughout the story, at least for the first 3 chapters so far, and Jim Dale speeds up and slows down and speeds up and slows down based on kind of the pacing of the story. I actually really like that because it makes the story more interesting. I found myself paying a little bit more attention to the Jim Dale narration than I did with the Stephen Fry narration, which is weird because I listened to the Stephen Fry one first, so I'm listening to the same chapters a second time around and paying more attention to them the second time around because of that. I also think Jim Dale has a very unique voice that is very hit or miss. I personally really love his voice, but I can see why a lot of people maybe wouldn't. So I would recommend listening to the first chapter of the Jim Dale one, and if you really like it, continuing on with it, or if you don't like it, then doing the Stephen Fry one. The other thing that I want to talk about really quickly with the Jim Dale narration is the unique voices. The first time I heard Uncle Vernon's voice in the Jim Dale narration, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so good. He does the voices so well, especially for Uncle Vernon, Professor McGonagall, Professor Dumbledore, and Hagrid. Oh my gosh, Hagrid's voice is so good. It feels like I'm watching the movie with those voices because they're so distinct. I do think some of the other voices are not as good. I don't think Dudley is as good, or Aunt Petunia, or Harry. I think Stephen Fry did a lot better job on those 3 voices, but the voices that I mentioned that were very distinct were really, really well done in the Jim Dale narration. Ooh, one more thing. I do think because of Jim Dale's sort of like speeding up and slowing down and changing that pacing, he does a better job of like just the mysterious atmosphere and like the magical feel. I think the atmosphere of that narration is a little bit better. Okay, so I listened to the next 3 chapters 4 through 7 for the Stephen Fry version, so the British version of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. When I was in my car, the echo didn't annoy me as much, but as soon as I stepped out of my car, which was like the last half of the last chapter that I was listening to, it immediately started annoying me. I do think that the voices for the different characters are really well done. If you're judging it based off of like audiobooks in general, I think it's really well done, like compared to most other audiobooks that I've read. That being said, compared to the Jim Dale narration, I do think the Jim Dale's voices are more unique, and I like his voices more because of that. But I think the Stephen Fry's voices are milder. With Jim Dale's narration, there's some voices I really, really love, and then there are some that I like really don't like. And with Stephen Fry's voices, like I like all of them. I don't really love any of them. I don't hate any of them, but I like all of them. So it's just a milder, toned down version of like the unique voices, but each of them do have very unique voices. I will say that Stephen Fry did change his pacing a little bit this time, but only once, and that was when Hermione was speaking on the train, like when she's talking really fast. So it was only when the text specifically said to speed up rather than just going kind of like with the flow of how the text feels. I still think it was good. Like it was really good, but I miss some of the things from the other audiobook. One thing I completely forgot. I think the way that Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon's outrage when Hagrid came to the hut was done, I really, really loved it. Like that outrage was done really, really well, and I enjoyed that a lot in the Stephen Fry version. Okay, so I've read up to chapter 7 in the Jim Dale version of the audiobook now. The first thing I noticed is that the Fred and George humor was not done half as well as in the Stephen Fry one. Like I really liked the way he did Fred and George. I felt like their humor just came out a lot better in the Stephen Fry version, so in the UK version, than in the Jim Dale one. But I still absolutely love the voices for McGonagall and Dumbledore and Hagrid. Like those are so perfect. Really, really love those voices. I also really love the Sorting Hat's voice. The Sorting Hat has a really interesting voice in the Jim Dale one. There was one that I thought was like a little weird, and that was Ollivander's. The voices for them are very different in the 2 different audiobooks, but I don't know if I like either of them. The Jim Dale one has a very distinct voice for Ollivander's, while Stephen Fry's one like is not distinct at all, and I don't know if I like either of them. But overall, so far, I'm enjoying the Jim Dale version a lot more, probably because of like the more distinct voices, and also I like how the pacing speeds up and slows down. I feel like it lends more to the mysterious atmosphere and just to like the tension of the story. Okay, so I just listened to chapters 8 through 11 of the Stephen Fry version, which is the Potions Master to the first Quidditch game, and I really, really enjoyed it. First of all, Snape's like speech at the beginning, I think he did such a good job on that speech, and also the Quidditch game. The Quidditch game was really, really well done. There were like portions in the middle that I didn't like as much, specifically like Filch's voice I feel like sounds a little too much like Hagrid's voice, which kind of like threw me off a little bit. But overall, I really enjoyed these next like 4 chapters. And I also think that Stephen Fry does a really good job when the characters are emotional. Like he does the emotion in the characters' voices really well, especially like high emotions like anger, excitement, things like those. I really, really like the way he does that. Okay, so I finished those 4 chapters from the Jim Dale version of the audiobook, and I have to say, I think Stephen Fry did a better job at the Quidditch commentating, but Jim Dale did the better job at the actual action in the Quidditch game, if that makes sense. The comments by Lee Jordan, I think Stephen Fry did a fantastic job on, and I felt myself paying way more attention to that. But at the actual narration of the story, where you're seeing like Harry flying and like things happening there, I think Jim Dale did a better job. So I don't know what that says about the audiobook. So I finished the next 3 chapters in both versions, and I don't have that much to say about this one that I haven't said previously. There was another Quidditch game, which I liked Jim Dale's narration of the Quidditch this game a little bit better than Stephen Fry's. I think that was more because there was like not as much commentary in that game as there was in the previous one, which I also really like Jim Dale's just general atmosphere better. I will say that the echo in the Stephen Fry version is really annoying me. I'm trying to judge it without the echo just in case the echo is because I'm streaming it since I don't have it downloaded, but I feel like it's not because of that. I feel like it's actually a part of the audiobook. That would be a deal breaker for me with audiobooks. Okay, so I finished both of the audiobooks. One thing I do have to say, the only thing I liked better in the Stephen Fry version was the centaurs. I think he did the centaurs really well. Pretty much everything else I liked better in the Jim Dale version. I really liked like the atmosphere of the Forbidden Forest in the Jim Dale version. It had like almost a horror aspect to it that I didn't expect from the Harry Potter series, but can kind of see how it works. And Jim Dale's narration just lends to that really well. And I really like that. I also really like his voices for Voldemort and Dumbledore a lot better than Stephen Fry's voices. So that's why I just really enjoyed Jim Dale's version, especially of the ending, better. Okay, to summarize all of this, I think both audiobooks are great. Like compared to just audiobooks in general, I think both versions of the first Harry Potter book was done really well. And I think they have different strengths and weaknesses as well. So the UK version, narrated by Stephen Fry, I think did a really good job when it came to humor and emotional outbursts. I think it was done really, really well. That being said, there was a little bit of an echo, just offset slightly from the regular voice that kind of annoyed me and frustrated me at times. I'm not sure if this is because I was streaming it from the Audible website or if that's actually part of the audiobook, but it did frustrate me a lot while I was listening to the audiobook. However, even though I really enjoyed the Stephen Fry version, I do think there were a lot more aspects of the Jim Dale version that I liked better. Specifically, Jim Dale has much more unique character voices that I really enjoyed. That being said, I think that some people may not like the character voices as much because of how distinct they are. There are some voices that are really, really well done, and then there are other voices that, because they're so distinct, can kind of get you out of the story a little bit. I felt that way a lot, especially like with the centaurs, and every once in a while with like one of the characters, it just felt a little out of place. But overall, I preferred the more unique character voices of Jim Dale's narration to Stephen Fry's narration. I also really think that Jim Dale's regular narrator voice lent really well to just the magical atmosphere of the story, and because of that, I'm gonna have to give this one to the Jim Dale narration of the Harry Potter series. I really, really enjoyed it, and I just felt like I was way more invested in the story when I was listening to that version rather than the UK version, which surprised me a little bit too, because I was listening to that one afterwards. Like I listened to that one second, so I had already just listened to the chapters that I was listening to when I started listening to the chapters again. So like, if anything, I would be less interested in the chapters because I just heard the same thing, but I was actually more interested in it. So that's why for this one, I'm gonna have to go with the US version of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, narrated by Jim Dale. Such a beautiful audiobook, and I absolutely loved it. Mind you, the UK version is not a bad audiobook either, but I will say if that echo is actually part of the audiobook, that would definitely be a deal breaker for me. I would not purchase those audiobooks if that is part of it. I highly recommend, if you're considering whether to buy one or the other, to listen to the first chapter of each one, because the Jim Dale one, like I said, the first chapter will give you a good idea of the different unique voices and if they annoy you or if you like them. With the Stephen Fry one, you can see if it does have that little echo that I was talking about, which does kind of really annoy me while I'm listening to the audiobook. I hope you guys found this helpful. If you guys have listened to these audiobooks, let me know down in the comments because I would love to discuss with you guys. I post videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, so consider subscribing. I also post bonus videos, so if you want to be notified as soon as I upload, you can click that little bell icon. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. All social media links are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.